Welcome to my channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The sound of ticking should be constant, rhythmic, predictable. But when every clock in your house freezes at the exact same moment, night after night, you start to wonder if time itself is trying to tell you something or warn you. I'm about to share something that happened to me last month in my suburban home in Millbrook, Connecticut. Something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. If you're listening to this alone, especially if it's late at night, you might want to check your own clocks, just to be sure. And now, the story begins. My name is Sarah Chen, and I've always been particular about time. Maybe it's because I work as an air traffic controller at Bradley International, where every second matters. Where being off by even 30 seconds can mean disaster. So, when I moved into my 2-story colonial on Elm Street last October, the first thing I did was synchronize every clock in the house. The grandfather clock in the hallway, the digital alarm on my nightstand, the microwave in the kitchen, even the old analog clock in the guest bedroom that came with the house, all perfectly aligned, all ticking in unison. That's why I noticed immediately when something went wrong. It was a Tuesday night, or technically Wednesday morning. I'd woken up with that heavy feeling you get when your body knows it's too early to be conscious. The room was pitch black, save for the red glow of my alarm clock. 3:17 a.m. I groaned and rolled over, trying to fall back asleep. But something felt off. Usually, I could hear the grandfather clock's pendulum swinging downstairs. Its deep tick-tock was like a heartbeat for the house. But now, silence. Maybe it needs winding, I thought. Though I just wound it on Sunday, I dragged myself out of bed, my bare feet finding the cold hardwood floor. The house felt different at night. During the day, it was all sunshine through lace curtains and the smell of coffee. But at 3 a.m., shadows seemed to pool in corners I'd never noticed before. The grandfather clock stood sentinel in the hallway, its brass pendulum frozen mid-swing. The hands pointed to 3:17. Weird, I muttered, reaching for the winding key. That's when I noticed the wall clock in the living room also stopped, also at 3:17. A chill ran down my spine. Though I told myself I was being ridiculous, power surge maybe, but that wouldn't affect the wind-up clocks. I checked the kitchen, the microwave display, 3:17, the oven, 3:17, even my battery-powered clock radio in the den, 3:17. Every single clock in my house had stopped at exactly the same time. I stood in my kitchen, heart hammering, trying to make sense of it. The refrigerator hummed. The dishwasher's cycle light blinked. The power was clearly on. So why? Then I heard it, or rather, I felt it. You know that sensation when someone's watching you, that prickle at the base of your neck? I turned slowly, expecting to see, I don't know what I expected to see. The kitchen was empty, but through the window above the sink, I could have sworn I saw movement in the backyard. Just a flash of something pale against the October darkness. I grabbed my phone to check the time. 3:24 a.m. So time hadn't actually stopped. Just my clocks. All of them. Simultaneously. I spent the next hour resetting every timepiece in the house, telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe some kind of electromagnetic pulse? I'd heard about those. They could affect electronics, though that didn't explain the mechanical clocks. By 4:30, everything was ticking normally again. I made myself some chamomile tea, sat at the kitchen table, and tried to shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my house, in my life. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next evening, I went to bed early, exhausted from work and lack of sleep. I'd almost convinced myself the clock incident was some weird fluke, a story I'd tell at parties. You'll never believe what happened. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke again. This time, I knew before I even looked. That same heavy silence, that same absence of ticking. I grabbed my phone first this time, watched as its display showed 3:17, 3:18, 3:19, while my alarm clock remained frozen. I didn't bother checking the other clocks. I knew what I'd find. Instead, I sat up in bed, listening. Really listening. Because underneath the silence, there was something else. A sound so faint I might have been imagining it. Like whispers, or wind through leaves. But there was no wind that night. I crept to my bedroom window, peeled back the curtain just enough to peer outside. The street was empty, bathed in the amber glow of streetlights. But in my backyard, near the old oak tree, something moved, a figure, tall, impossibly thin, just standing there, facing my house. I stumbled backward, heart racing, and when I looked again, nothing. Just the oak tree's twisted branches casting shadows across the lawn. You're seeing things, Sarah. Sleep deprivation does that. But I couldn't shake what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. The proportions had been all wrong. Too tall, too stretched. Like someone had taken a normal person and pulled them like taffy. I didn't reset the clocks that night. I just sat in my bedroom with all the lights on, waiting for dawn. The next day at work I made mistakes, small ones, but in air traffic control there's no such thing as a harmless error. My supervisor Tom pulled me aside. "Sarah, you okay? You seem distracted." I almost told him, almost said, "Every clock in my house stops at 3:17 a.m., and I think someone's watching me." But how crazy would that sound? "Just having trouble sleeping in the new house," I said instead. "You know how it is. New sounds, new shadows." Tom nodded sympathetically. "Take the weekend, get some rest. This job requires you at 100%. That night, I tried something different. I set up my phone to record video, positioned it to capture both my alarm clock and the window. If something was happening, I'd have proof, but first, I did something else. I called my sister in Seattle. Emma picked up on the third ring. "Sarah, it's like midnight here. What's wrong?" I just needed to hear your voice. I couldn't tell her the truth. She'd think I'd lost it. "New house jitters, you know? You sure that's all? You sound scared." I almost broke down then, almost told her everything. But what would she do? Fly across the country to... what? Watch my clocks with me? "I'm fine. Just stay on the phone with me for a bit." We talked about nothing, her kids, her job, normal things, safe things, things that happened in daylight, in a world where clocks didn't stop and shadows didn't watch. At 3:10, I told her I was feeling better, made her promise to call me tomorrow. Then I hung up and waited. 3:17 a.m. came like clockwork. Pun intended. I woke to that familiar silence, reached for my phone, and watched the recording back. What I saw made my blood run cold. The video showed my alarm clock ticking normally until 3:16, then at 3:17 exactly, it stopped. But that wasn't the terrifying part. In the reflection on the clock's face, barely visible, was my window. And in that window, for just 3 seconds, was a face, not human, not quite. The features were in the right places, but wrong. Eyes too large, mouth too wide. And it wasn't looking at the clock, it was looking at me, at the camera, like it knew I was recording. I dropped the phone, hands shaking so badly I couldn't pick it up again for several minutes. When I finally did, when I tried to replay the video, the file was corrupted, nothing but static. I didn't sleep for the next 2 days. Couldn't. Every shadow made me jump. Every creak of the house sent my heart racing. I called in sick to work. spent my time researching. First, I looked into the house's history. Nothing dramatic, built in 1952, 3 previous owners. The last one, an elderly woman named Margaret Mills, had lived there for 40 years before passing away peacefully in her sleep. At least, that's what the record said. I dug deeper, found an old article in the Millbrook Gazette archives. Margaret Mills had complained to the police multiple times in her final years about prowlers and peeping toms. The police never found anyone. The neighbors thought she was going senile. But one detail made my skin crawl. In her last report, filed just 2 weeks before her death, she'd mentioned that her clocks kept stopping. The officer had noted it as evidence of her declining mental state. I needed to know more. The Millbrook Historical Society was housed in a converted Victorian near the town center. The volunteer behind the desk, a sweet woman named Dorothy, lit up when I mentioned Elm Street. "Oh, you bought the Mills place. How wonderful. It's such a lovely home, though..." She paused, adjusted her glasses. "There were some peculiar stories about that property. Before it was developed, I mean." "What kind of stories?" Dorothy disappeared into the back room, returned with a leather-bound journal. This was kept by one of the original surveyors of the area, 1887. He mentions that particular plot of land several times. She opened to a bookmarked page. The handwriting was cramped, faded, but still legible. "The natives avoid this ground. They say it is a thin place where time moves strangely. I myself have noticed my pocket watch behaves erratically here. It stops, always at 17 minutes past the hour, though which hour seems to vary. The men are growing uneasy. They report feeling watched, especially during the pre-dawn hours." I photographed the page with trembling hands. "Can I see more?" Dorothy flipped through several entries. Each one made my skin crawl more than the last. March 15th, 1887. Jameson claims he saw a figure last night, impossibly tall, he says, standing among the trees. When he called out, it vanished. The men want to move camp. I've agreed. This place feels wrong. March 18th, 1887. 3 miles from the original site. Yet my watch stopped again at 17 past 3 this morning. I was alone in my tent when it happened, alone. Yet I felt eyes upon me, many eyes. When the watch resumed, there were scratches on the tent fabric. From the outside, long, deliberate marks. We leave at dawn. Dorothy closed the journal. There's more, but it becomes incoherent toward the end. The surveyor, Edmund Cross, was admitted to Hartford Asylum 2 months later. He kept insisting that time was hunting him. What happened to the land after that? It sat empty for decades. No one would buy it, until the post-war housing boom in the 1950s. Developers didn't care about old stories. They just saw prime real estate. I thanked Dorothy and left, but not before she grabbed my arm. "Dear, if you're experiencing anything unusual, there's someone you should talk to. Professor Marcus Webb at Central Connecticut State. He studies, well, let's call them temporal anomalies. He's helped others from your street. Others. Plural." I met Professor Webb the next day in his cluttered office. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with intense green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Miss Chen," he said before I could even introduce myself properly. "Elm Street. The clocks stop at 3:17. You've seen it, the Thin Man. How did you..." "Because you're the 4th person from that street to find me in the last decade. Please, sit. Tell me everything." I did, every detail. He listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in a leather journal disturbingly similar to the surveyor's. When I finished, he leaned back. "What do you know about liminal spaces? Like airports, places of transition?" "Exactly, but time has liminal spaces too. Moments of transition. 11:59 to midnight, 2:59 to 3 o'clock during daylight savings, and 3:17 a.m. Well, that's special. Why? Nobody knows for certain, but across cultures, across centuries, 3:17 a.m. appears again and again. Deaths, disappearances, hauntings. It's as if the universe hiccups at that precise moment. He pulled out a folder, spread photographs across his desk. My blood ran cold. They were all different, taken in different decades, judging by the quality, but they all showed the same thing, a tall, impossibly thin figure, sometimes in windows, sometimes in doorways, sometimes just standing in the background of family photos, unnoticed until later. "We call it the chronophage," he said quietly, "the time eater. It exists in the spaces between moments, feeding on temporal energy, and it's drawn to people like you. People like me, those who live by the clock, who measure their lives in precise increments. Air traffic controller, that's perfect for it. You're a beacon of temporal regularity in a chaotic world." He showed me more files, case studies. A train conductor in 1953 whose clocks stopped at 3:17. He was found 3 days later, aged 30 years overnight. A Swiss watchmaker in 1978 who reported similar experiences. She disappeared entirely, leaving behind only a room full of stopped clocks. "But there have been survivors," Webb said, noting my growing panic. "People who broke the pattern, who refused to be prey." That's when he told me about the confrontation method, similar to what the waitress had said, but with more detail, more warnings. When you face it, and you must face it, you cannot show fear. Fear is temporal. It exists in the anticipation of future events. The chronophage feeds on that. You must exist purely in the present moment. No past, no future. Just now. He gave me a small device, looked like an old pocket watch. "This might help. It's been modified. When the clocks stop, click it 3 times. It won't stop the chronophage, but it might confuse it, give you an edge." I left his office with more questions than answers, but also with a strange sense of purpose. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't helpless. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into the Holiday Inn near the highway, told myself it was just for one night, just to get some real sleep. But at 3:17 a.m., I woke in my hotel room. The digital clock on the nightstand was frozen. 3:17. The TV display, 3:17. My phone, the only timepiece still working, showed 3:22. It had followed me. I sat up, scanning the darkened room. The heavy curtains blocked any view outside, but I could hear something. Tap, 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 like fingernails on glass. I knew I shouldn't look. Every instinct screamed at me to stay in bed, to hide under the covers like a child. But I had to know. I crept to the window, pulled the curtain back an inch. Nothing. Just the parking lot, empty except for a few cars. But on the window itself, on the outside, were marks. Long, thin scratches in the glass, fresh ones, still catching the light from the parking lot lamps, and in the reflection. Just for a moment, I saw it, standing behind me, inside the room. I spun around. Nothing there. But the bathroom door, which I'd definitely closed, was now open. Just a crack. Just enough to see the darkness beyond. I grabbed my keys and ran. Didn't even put on shoes. Just ran. Down the hallway. Past the confused night clerk. Out into the parking lot. I drove for an hour. No destination in mind. Just away. Eventually, I pulled into a 24-hour diner off Route 84. Ordered coffee with shaking hands. Tried to think. Whatever this was, it wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to me now, following me, growing bolder. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, noticed my distress. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed. It came out hysterical. "Something like that." She sat down across from me, even though it was against policy. "Want to talk about it?" And for some reason, maybe because I was exhausted, maybe because she reminded me of my mom, I told her everything. The clocks, the figure, the scratches on the window. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "My grandmother used to tell stories," she said finally, "about things that exist in the spaces between seconds. Creatures that feed on time itself. She said they're drawn to people who are precise, punctual, people who measure their lives in minutes and seconds. That's..." I wanted to say crazy, but was it any crazier than what I'd experienced? She said they follow patterns, always appear at the same time, because that's when they're strongest, when time hesitates. The waitress stood up. She also said there's a way to break the pattern, but it's dangerous. "Tell me, you have to catch it. At 3:17, not hide, not run, face it. And when all the clocks stop, you have to be the one who makes time move again." I went home that morning, not because I was brave, because I was tired of running. If this thing, whatever it was, had attached itself to me, then running was pointless. I spent the day preparing, bought battery-powered lanterns, placed them throughout the house, set up 3 cameras, different angles, all with fresh memory cards, and in the center of my living room, I arranged every clock I owned in a circle, 13 in total, all synchronized. I also did something else, called my parents in Phoenix, told them I loved them, called Emma again, listened to my nephew laugh in the background. If this went wrong, I wanted those to be my last memories. Not fear, not darkness, love. I wrote a letter, sealed it, addressed it to Professor Webb. Inside, I detailed everything. If I disappeared, at least someone would know the truth. As night fell, I prepared myself mentally. No fear, Webb had said. Exist in the present. I practiced meditation techniques I'd learned years ago. Focused on my breathing, on the here and now. At 2:30 a.m., something unexpected happened. My doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole. Mrs. Patterson from next door stood on my porch, wearing a nightgown and slippers. Her eyes were vacant, staring. "Mrs. Patterson," I called through the door. "Are you okay?" "The clocks," she said, her voice flat, mechanical. "I heard them stop. Did you hear them stop, Sarah?" A chill ran down my spine. "Go home, Mrs. Patterson. Lock your doors." "It's almost time," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. 17 past 3. It's always 17 past 3. Has been since I was a little girl. Since I lived on this street the first time. First time? Mrs. Patterson had told me she'd just moved here from Florida 2 years ago. "Tick-tock," she whispered. "Tick-tock. Time to feed the hungry minutes." Then she turned and walked away. Not toward her house, but down the street, into the darkness. I wanted to follow, to help, but I knew it was a trap, a distraction. The chronophage was already playing games. I went back to my circle of clocks, sat in the center, waited. 3 a.m. I sat in the center of the circle, watching the clocks tick in unison. My heart kept time with them, tick-tock, tick-tock. 3:10 a.m. The house began to feel different, colder. The shadows seemed to deepen, to gain weight. 3:15 a.m. I heard it. Footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate. The doorknob rattled, even though I knew I'd locked it. 3:16 a.m. The footsteps moved around the house, past the living room window, past the kitchen, circling, like a predator stalking prey. 3:17 a.m. The clocks stopped, all of them, in perfect unison. The sudden silence was deafening, and then the front door opened. I hadn't heard it unlock, it simply opened. And there it stood. The waitress's grandmother had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't a creature that existed between seconds. This was something that existed outside time altogether. Something that had found a crack in reality at 3:17 a.m. and was using it to enter our world. It had to duck to fit through the doorway. Its limbs were too long, joints in the wrong places. Its face, I can't properly describe its face, features that shifted and blurred, like looking at someone through running water. It moved into the room with horrible grace, approaching the circle of frozen clocks, approaching me. But I remembered what the waitress had said. When time stops, be the one who makes it move again. I reached for the nearest clock, an old wind-up alarm clock, and forced the minute hand forward. It resisted, like moving through molasses, but it moved. 3:18. The creature made a sound. Not quite a scream, not quite static, the sound of time being torn. I grabbed another clock, pushed the hands forward, 3:18. The creature stumbled. Its form flickered, becoming more transparent. Another clock. Another. Each one harder than the last, like the universe itself was fighting me. But I kept going. 3:18, 3:18, 3:18. With each clock I changed. The creature grew weaker. Its horrible limbs began to fold in on themselves. The doorway it had entered through began to shrink. The last clock was the grandfather clock. I had to leave the circle to reach it. Had to pass within inches of the writhing thing. It reached for me. Fingers like icicles brushing my arm. Burning cold, but I made it. Grabbed the clock hands. Forced them forward. 3:18. The creature shrieked. A sound that shattered 2 windows and made my ears bleed. Then it collapsed, folding in on itself like origami in reverse, until it was gone. The front door slammed shut. The clocks began ticking again. All of them. In perfect synchronization. But something else happened. Something Professor Webb hadn't warned me about. As the chronophage vanished, I saw things. Flashes. Memories that weren't mine. The surveyor, Edmund Cross, stumbling through the woods. Clocks hanging from every tree branch. All stopped at 3:17. Margaret Mills, younger, standing in this very room, facing the same creature. The Blackwood girl, Amy, but grown up now, teaching her own daughter to win clocks, to keep them running. Always running. And more. Dozens of people, hundreds, all connected by this moment, this place, this thing that fed on time. I understood then. The chronophage wasn't destroyed, it was merely displaced, pushed back to wherever such things wait, and it would return. Maybe not to me, maybe not to this house, but somewhere, somewhen. Another person would wake at 3:17 to silent clocks and watching shadows. The modified pocket watch Webb had given me was cracked, its face spider-webbed with fractures. Inside, impossibly. The gears were running backward. I collapsed on the floor. Exhausted. Triumphant. And then I noticed something that made my victory turn to ash. The cameras I'd set up. All 3 of them. Their displays showed the same thing. 3:17 a.m. They'd been recording the whole time, but according to them, no time had passed at all, which meant there would be no evidence, no proof, nothing to show that any of this had been real. I checked the footage anyway, static, all of it. Nothing but static and, if you listened carefully, the sound of ticking clocks. It's been 3 weeks now. The clocks haven't stopped again. I sleep through the night, mostly, but sometimes, at 3:17 a.m., I still wake up and I listen, just to make sure they're still ticking, because I know something now, something that keeps me awake some nights. The creature wasn't unique. It was just one of many. pressing against the thin spots in reality, waiting for time to hesitate. And there are so many thin spots, so many moments when time stutters. 11:11, 12:34, 4:44. How many of them are watching? How many are waiting? I still work at the airport, still track time down to the second. But I've made some changes. I've removed most of the clocks from my house, kept just a few, enough to know what time it is, but not enough to create a pattern, not enough to attract attention. I stay in touch with Professor Webb. He tells me I'm one of the lucky ones, that my confrontation was clean. Some people, the chronophage leaves pieces behind, temporal echoes. They see moments before they happen, live Tuesday before Monday, age backward every third Thursday. Mrs. Patterson never came home that night. The police found her 3 states away, with no memory of how she got there. She claimed she'd lost a week, though only 8 hours had passed. She moved away shortly after. I don't blame her. But I know it's still out there, or others like it, because sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night, I'll pass a house where every window is lit, where someone else is awake at 3:17 a.m., checking their clocks, making sure they're still ticking, and I wonder if I should stop. Knock on their door, warn them. But what would I say? How do you tell someone that time itself can be a trap, that punctuality can be a curse, that there are things waiting in the moments between moments? Hungry for those who measure their lives too precisely? You don't. You can't. All you can do is hope they figure it out in time, before the clocks stop, before the door opens, before they learn what I learned. Some things are meant to remain outside of time, and some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. But there's one more thing I haven't told you, one detail that keeps me awake even now, weeks later. After the confrontation, after the chronophage vanished, I found something in my backyard, near the old oak tree where I'd first seen it standing. The ground was disturbed, churned up like something had been digging, or climbing out. I got a shovel, started digging. 3 feet down, I found them. Clocks, dozens of them, all different types, different eras. Pocket watches from the 1800s, digital watches from the 1980s. Even a sundial cracked down the middle, and with them, photographs. Faded, water-damaged, but clear enough to see faces. People I didn't recognize, but who all shared the same expression, the same hollow eyes of someone who'd seen time itself become predator. I brought them to Professor Webb. He went pale when he saw them. "Trophies," he whispered. "It keeps trophies. From the people it takes?" "No." His voice was barely audible. "From the ones who got away, the ones who fought back. These are warnings, or promises." He showed me something else then. A map of the United States covered in red pins. Hundreds of them, each marking a place where clocks had stopped at 3:17, where someone had encountered the chronophage. "It's not just one creature," he explained. "It's a species. They exist in the temporal breaks, the cracks in time, and they're spreading." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you survived a direct confrontation. That makes you unique and dangerous to them." He leaned forward. "They'll remember you, Sarah. Your temporal signature is burned into their perception. They know you can hurt them. So, what do? Live your life, but stay vigilant. And if you ever meet someone else who mentions stopped clocks, strange figures, lost time, send them to me. We're building a network. Survivors, fighters. People who understand that time isn't just a measurement. It's a battlefield." I took his card, joined his network, started attending meetings in the basement of a Hartford library. Others like me, people who'd stared into the temporal abyss and lived. We share strategies, warning signs, Protection methods. Did you know salt disrupts temporal fields? That running water creates a kind of chronological static? That certain frequencies, 417 hertz specifically, can mask your temporal signature? I learned all this and more, became somewhat of an expert in temporal defense, even helped a few people, guided them through their own confrontations. But the nightmares never stopped. Every night, I dream of clocks, endless rooms full of them, all ticking at different speeds, different rhythms, creating a cacophony that drives me to the edge of madness. And in the center of it all, the chronophage, waiting, watching. Sometimes I wonder if I really won that night, or if I just postponed the inevitable, because time always wins in the end. We age, we die, we become memories, then forgotten memories, then nothing at all. Maybe that's what the chronophage really is, not a monster, not an alien, just time itself, given form and hunger. The universe's way of reminding us that every second we steal from eternity must eventually be paid back, with interest. But until that payment comes due, I keep living, keep working, keep checking my clocks at 3:17 a.m. just to make sure they're still ticking, because as long as they tick, I know I'm still here, still fighting, still defying whatever waits in the spaces between seconds. And if you've made it this far in my story, perhaps you're a fighter too. Perhaps you've noticed things, felt things, that don't quite fit into the normal flow of time. Perhaps you've woken at 3:17 a.m. for no reason, heart pounding, certain that someone or something was watching. If so, you're not alone. We're out here. The temporal survivors, the clock watchers, the ones who know that time isn't just a river flowing in one direction, but an ocean with strange tides and stranger creatures swimming in its depths. Professor Webb gave me a phrase, a kind of motto for our group. Time is a predator, but we are not prey. Remember that. When the clocks stop, when the shadows grow long, when the impossible figure appears at your window, you are not prey. You are a guardian of your own timeline, a defender of your personal now, and you have more power than you know. The chronophage feeds on fear, on the anxiety of future moments, and the regret of past ones. But if you can learn to exist purely in the present, to make each second a fortress of absolute now, you become indigestible to it, unpalatable, dangerous. So live. Live fiercely in each moment. Don't just watch time. Inhabit it, own it, make it yours. And maybe, just maybe, when the clocks stop at 3:17 a.m., you'll be ready. Sweet dreams. If you made it this far, check your clocks. Are they all showing the same time? Are they all ticking? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever experienced something similar, something that happened when time seemed to stop, I'd love to hear about it. Hit subscribe if you want more true stories from the spaces between seconds. And remember, it's not paranoia if something's really watching. Sleep tight. Story number 2. They found my grandmother with her fingers fused to the walls. That's not how the police report described it, of course. The official cause of death was a stroke. Peaceful, they said. Natural causes. But I saw the photos the coroner didn't want me to see. I saw what really happened in that house on Maple Street. And I know why she spent her last moments trying to claw her way out of her own home. My name is Sarah Chen, and if you're listening to this late at night, cozy in your bed, thinking this is just another creepy story to help you drift off to sleep, I need you to pay attention, because what happened in Willow Creek isn't over. It's spreading, and after what I discovered in my grandmother's attic, I think it might already be too late, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From the day I first noticed that not a single bird would fly over that cursed town. The story begins now. The GPS died exactly at the town limits. One moment, the robotic voice was guiding me through the Colorado mountain passes. The next, nothing but static. My phone showed full bars, but every app that needed location services just stopped, like Willow Creek existed in some kind of dead zone that technology couldn't penetrate. I pulled over at the rusted sign marking the town entrance. Population 2,847, it claimed, though the numbers looked like they'd been painted over multiple times. Each layer slightly different: 3,492, 2,901, 2,847, always decreasing, never growing. That's when I noticed the birds. A massive flock of crows approached from the south, their bodies a black cloud against the October sky. They flew in perfect formation until they reached the exact point where I'd stopped. Then, they split. Like water hitting an invisible wall, they veered sharply east and west, going miles out of their way to avoid flying directly over the town. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching. Sparrows did the same thing. A hawk circled 3 times at the boundary before turning back. Even a commercial plane seemed to adjust its flight path, though that had to be coincidence. Right? The wrongness of it made my skin crawl. Birds don't just avoid entire towns. Not without reason. I should have turned around right then. Should have called the lawyer, told him to handle everything remotely. But Grandma Rose had raised me for 3 years after my parents died. I owed her this much, to at least see her home one last time, to understand why she'd stayed in this place for 40 years, even after Grandpa died, even after everyone told her to leave. The drive into town took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of absolute silence. No birds singing, no dogs barking. Even my car seemed to run quieter, like the engine was afraid to disturb whatever slept here. Main Street looked like a Norman Rockwell painting that had been left in the sun too long. Everything was there. The general store, the diner, the barber shop with its spinning pole, but the colors were wrong. Faded, like the whole town was holding its breath. I parked outside Milligan's general store. Needed supplies, and needed to feel normal for a minute. The bell above the door sounded too loud in the silence. "You must be Rose's granddaughter." I jumped. The woman behind the counter had appeared without sound, silver hair perfect, wearing a tracksuit that probably cost more than my rent. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were measuring me. "I'm Margaret Milligan. Your grandmother told me all about you, Sarah." She came around the counter, movements too smooth for someone her age. "We've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" "I only decided to come yesterday." Her smile widened. "Rose said you'd come. Said you'd need to understand. She left something for you, but promised you'd stop here first." She reached under the counter and pulled out an envelope. My name was written on it in Grandma's shaky handwriting. Inside, a single key and a note. "Sarah, my dear, don't go in the attic until you understand. The birds know. Watch them. Learn why. And whatever you do, don't breathe with it. Rose." "Breathe with what?" I asked. Margaret's face went carefully neutral. "Best you get settled first. The house is on Maple Street, 3rd on the left. Your grandmother was particular about timing. Said you'd know when you were ready." She walked me to the door, her hand on my elbow just firm enough to be guiding rather than friendly. "One more thing, Sarah. The town has rhythms, patterns. You'll notice them soon enough. When you do..." She squeezed my arm. "Try not to join them." The house squatted on Maple Street like it was trying to sink into the earth. Sage green paint peeling at the edges, windows dark despite the afternoon sun. The other houses on the street looked similar, maintained but abandoned, lived in but lifeless. I used the key from the envelope. The door opened with a sigh that sounded almost human. Inside, time had stopped the day Grandma died. Her reading glasses lay folded on a library book. The respiratory system of Colorado cave formations. Her crossword puzzle waited on the kitchen table, nearly finished. A coffee cup with lipstick marks sat in the sink, unwashed. but it was the walls that made me step back. Every surface was covered in something. At first, I thought it was water damage. Dark stains spreading from the corners where walls met ceiling, but the patterns were too regular, too deliberate. Like veins under skin, they pulsed with a rhythm I could almost detect. No. Trick of the light. Old house, old pipes. I was letting the strange bird behavior get to me. I spent the rest of the day doing normal things. Unpacking, making lists, calling the utility companies. Pretending I couldn't hear the house settling around me with sounds that seemed too organic for wood and plaster. The sun set at 6:47. I know because that's when every light on the street turned on simultaneously. Not gradually, like people coming home from work. All at once, like synchronized breathing. I made soup from a can, ate, watching the street through the kitchen window. Nothing moved out there. No cars. No people walking dogs. Just empty sidewalks and lit windows that revealed nothing of the lives inside. At exactly 9 p.m., the lights went out. All of them. Every house on the street going dark in the same instant. Except mine. I stood at the window, soup bowl forgotten, watching the darkness. That's when I saw them. Figures standing in the street, not moving, not talking. Just standing there, faces turned up toward my lit windows. Dozens of them. Waiting. I turned off my lights with shaking hands. Stood there in the dark, holding my breath. When I finally worked up the courage to peek through the curtains again, the street was empty. Sleep came in fragments. The house made sounds no house should make. Wet sounds, organic sounds. And underneath it all, a rhythm. Like breathing, but deeper. Slower. Coming from everywhere and nowhere. At 3 a.m. exactly, I gave up on sleep. That's when I heard it clearly for the first time. The sound that would haunt me forever. The sound that explained why birds wouldn't fly over Willow Creek. The entire house was breathing. I lay rigid in bed, every muscle tense, counting. In, hold, out, 15 breaths per minute, exactly. The walls expanded and contracted with each cycle, so subtle you'd miss it if you weren't looking. But once you noticed, I grabbed my phone, started recording. The timestamp showed 3 a.m. The breathing had started exactly then. Like clockwork, like something scheduled. By 3:30, I couldn't stand it anymore. I crept downstairs, bare feet silent on the old wood. The breathing was everywhere. In the walls, the floors. Even the air itself seemed to pulse with it. The dark stains I'd noticed earlier were more visible now, glowing faintly with some kind of phosphorescence. In the kitchen, the crossword puzzle had changed. I was sure of it. Where before there had been empty squares, now words filled the spaces. But not in Grandma's handwriting. The letters were shaky, uneven, like someone writing with their non-dominant hand. Or something learning to write for the first time. 1 across, Sarah. 5 down, understand. 7 across, attic. My hands shook as I picked up the puzzle. Underneath, another note in Grandma's writing. When it knows your name, you're running out of time. The breathing seemed to intensify, walls flexing more visibly. And then I heard something else. Whispers. Not words exactly, but patterns in the air between breaths. Like voices speaking in frequencies just beyond human perception. I looked at the key Margaret had given me. Not the house key, a different one. Older, the kind that might open an attic door. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. Pack up, drive away, never look back. But those figures in the street, they'd been waiting for something. And the birds knew something I didn't. I had to understand. The stairs to the second floor creaked with each step, but the sound was swallowed by the breathing. It was louder up here, more insistent. The phosphorescent veins in the walls pulsed brighter, creating a network of light that led to one door at the end of the hall. The attic. The key fit perfectly. The door swung open to reveal a pull-down ladder already extended. waiting. The smell hit me first. Sweet and chemical, like overripe fruit mixed with formaldehyde. The breathing was deafening up here, coming from all directions. I climbed the ladder, phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. What I found there changed everything I thought I knew about the world. The attic wasn't an attic anymore. It was alive. The walls, ceiling, and floor were covered in tissue. Not like wallpaper or insulation, actual living tissue. It pulsed with the breathing, wet and glistening in my phone's light. Veins as thick as garden hoses ran through it, pumping something dark and viscous. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the photographs. Hundreds of them, pressed into the living walls like specimens in amber. All of them showed the same thing. People standing in their homes, smiling at the camera. Normal family photos. Except their fingers were sunk into the walls behind them. Their skin had the same phosphorescent glow as the veins in my grandmother's house. And their eyes were completely black. I found one of Grandma Rose, recent based on her age. She stood in this very attic, both hands pressed against the breathing walls, that same terrible smile on her face. But her eyes still had color, still had life. At the bottom, in her handwriting, day 14,234. Still myself. Still fighting. 40 years. She'd been fighting this for 40 years. A wet sound made me turn. In the corner, where the tissue was thickest, something pushed through the wall. A hand. Human, but wrong. Too many joints. Fingers that bent in impossible directions. It beckoned to me. That's when the whispers became words. "Sarah." The voice was made of hundreds of voices, all speaking in unison. "We've been waiting for you." I scrambled backward, nearly falling down the ladder. The hand stretched further from the wall, followed by an arm, a shoulder. A face began to push through the tissue. Features blurred and shifting like someone underwater. "Don't run," it whispered. "We need you. The town needs you. Just like it needed Rose." I ran. Down the ladder, through the hall, down the stairs. The house groaned around me, walls flexing, trying to block my path. The front door wouldn't open. The windows were sealed. The breathing grew faster, angry. Finally, I remembered the back door. Burst through it into the pre-dawn darkness. Ran to my car, fumbling for keys. That's when I saw them again. Every resident of Willow Creek stood in the street. Hundreds of them. All breathing in perfect unison. 15 breaths per minute. Their eyes reflected the phosphorescent glow from the houses, and they were all smiling. "She's not ready," one of them said. Margaret Milligan stepped forward from the crowd. "But she will be. They always are in the end." I got in my car, locked the doors, started the engine. But as I drove through those crowds of breathing people, I understood something terrible. My own breathing had synced with theirs. I was already becoming part of it. I made it 3 miles out of town before the seizure hit. One moment I was driving, hands death-gripped on the wheel. The next, my lungs simply stopped working. Not like holding your breath, like forgetting how to breathe entirely. My body convulsed, the car swerving across the empty road. Somehow, I managed to pull over before blacking out. I woke up in the Willow Creek Medical Center. Clean white walls, smell of antiseptic, normal hospital sounds. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined everything. Then I tried to sit up and realized I was strapped to the bed. "Please don't struggle." Dr. Patricia Hendricks stood at the foot of my bed, clipboard in hand. Middle-aged, kind eyes, looking exactly like a small-town doctor should. Except for the way she breathed. That same measured rhythm. 15 breaths per minute. "What did you do to me?" She pulled up a chair, sitting close enough that I could see the faint phosphorescent veins under her skin. "We didn't do anything, Sarah. Your body did it to itself. You tried to leave while synchronized. The breathing doesn't like that. The breathing, that's what we call it, though it has older names. The Arapaho who lived here centuries ago called it the Earth's lung. The miners in 1962 called it the devil's breath before they were absorbed. She unstrapped my arms, helping me sit up. Your grandmother never told you the real story, did she? She wanted to protect you. Thought if you never knew, you'd never be claimed. Claimed? Dr. Hendricks went to the window, gesturing for me to join her. Outside, Willow Creek looked perfectly normal in the morning sun. People walking dogs, kids riding bikes, a postman making deliveries. In 1962, the Hadley Mining Company was drilling a new shaft. They broke through into a cavern system that shouldn't have existed. The geology was all wrong, but what they found down there... She paused. Have you ever wondered if the Earth itself might be alive? Not metaphorically, literally. A single vast organism that we live on like bacteria on skin? I stayed silent, watching a kid bounce a ball in perfect rhythm. 15 bounces per minute. They found proof, a massive organ system kilometers deep, living tissue older than multicellular life, breathing, thinking in its slow way. And when they broke through, they woke it up. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen the walls, felt the breathing. Your grandmother spent 40 years documenting it. She handed me a thick folder. Her real research. Not the newspapers in the attic. Those were for visitors. This is the truth. I opened the folder. Medical charts, tissue samples, photographs of the thing underground. Massive, pulsing chambers that looked more like organs than caves, and growth charts showing how it had spread. It started with the miners, Dr. Hendricks continued. They breathed in the spores, microscopic, undetectable. Within days, they were synchronized. Within weeks, they were changing. The company tried to contain it, sealed the mine, evacuated the town, but it was already too late. A photograph showed miners standing at the shaft entrance. Their skin had that telltale glow. Their fingers were fused together. Their smiles were too wide. It spread through the groundwater, through the air, through the very earth beneath the town. Everyone who stayed more than a few days became infected, synchronized, part of the greater organism. Then why aren't you all like those things in the walls? She smiled sadly. Because we learned to manage it, to live with it instead of fighting it. The breathing doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to incorporate us, to add our consciousness to its own. Some of us found ways to maintain our individuality while still being part of the collective. Your grandmother was one of the best at it, but she died. Her fingers were fused to the walls. After 40 years of resistance, 40 years of fighting to stay herself while keeping the town secret. She was tired, Sarah, and when she knew you were coming, she made a choice, gave herself to the breathing completely so she could speak to you through it, guide you. I thought of the crossword puzzle, the messages, the hand reaching through the attic wall. That was her, part of her. Filtered through the collective consciousness. She's in there along with hundreds of others. They're not dead, they're transformed. Part of something vast and ancient and patient. Why the birds? I asked suddenly. Why won't they fly over? Dr. Hendricks actually laughed. Because they're smarter than us. They can sense what Willow Creek really is. A single massive organism wearing the disguise of a town. Every building is an organ. Every street is a vein, and we're the cells that keep it functioning. She stood, checking her watch. It's almost noon, time for Margaret to explain the rest. She's waited 60 years for someone like you, someone like me, someone with Rose's bloodline, Rose's resistance, someone who can lead the next generation of the Watch. She opened the door. The breathing is growing stronger. spreading further. We need someone who can help us maintain the balance, or decide if it's time to let it wake up completely. Margaret Milligan waited in the hospital lobby, still in her tracksuit, still smiling that measuring smile. "Ready for the truth, dear?" she asked. "All of it?" I thought about running, but my breathing was still synchronized. 15 breaths per minute. I was already trapped. "Show me," I said. She led me to the old mining museum, down into the basement, through a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," down stone steps that predated the town, into darkness that breathed. The cavern opened up like a cathedral made of flesh. The walls pulsed with that familiar rhythm. Veins of light traced patterns too complex for human minds to follow. And in the center was the heart. It was the size of a house. A massive, beating heart of living tissue suspended in the cavern by thick tendrils that disappeared into darkness. Each beat sent waves of phosphorescent fluid through veins as thick as tree trunks. The sound was deafening. Not just heard, but felt, vibrating through every bone in my body. Beautiful, isn't it? Margaret stood beside me, her face rapturous in the pulsing light. The heart of Willow Creek, the true town center. Others emerged from the shadows. Dr. Hendricks, Tom Garrett from the water plant, the postman I'd seen earlier, about 20 people in all, each breathing in perfect sync with the massive heart. "We are the Watch," Margaret continued. "The conscious cells in this greater organism. We guide its growth, shape its dreams, keep it stable. And if you fail," a new voice answered, young, clear, wrong. A girl stepped forward, maybe 10 years old, but her eyes were ancient. When she breathed, the heart seemed to match her rhythm, not the other way around. "I'm Emma," she said. "I was born here. Born breathing with it. I've never known anything else." She touched the nearest wall, and veins of light spread from her fingers. "The old watch is failing. People like Margaret, like your grandmother, they resist too much, fight too hard. The breathing needs acceptance, unity. It needs us to stop seeing it as other and start seeing it as self." "She's the future," Tom said quietly. "Kids like her, born into the synchronization. They don't fight it because they don't know there's anything to fight." "But we need a bridge," Margaret added. "Someone who understands both worlds. Someone who can help the transition happen smoothly. Rose chose you, Sarah. Brought you here knowing what you'd find. I didn't choose anything. I backed away, but the cavern had no exit anymore. The entrance had sealed, flesh flowing over stone. "Your grandmother's final gift," Emma said, producing a small vial from her pocket. "Her extracted consciousness. 40 years of memories and knowledge about the breathing. Drink this, and you'll understand everything she understood, know everything she knew." The vial glowed with that familiar phosphorescence. Inside, something swirled like smoke. "Or don't," Margaret said. "Try to leave, fight the synchronization, end up like the others who resisted too hard, absorbed completely, consciousness scattered through the collective until there's nothing left of who you were. Those are my only choices. Join you or disappear. There is another option." The voice came from the heart itself. Not heard but felt, vibrating through the cavity of my chest. The watch members fell to their knees, but I remained standing, transfixed. The heart's surface rippled, and a face emerged. Not human. Not anything that had ever been human, but somehow familiar. "You could choose to wake me fully," it said. "For 60 years I have slept, dreamed, grown slowly, but with the right catalyst, someone of Rose's bloodline, willing to give themselves completely, I could wake, could rise, could spread beyond this valley." "No," Margaret struggled to her feet. The balance must be maintained if it wakes fully. If I wake fully, the heart continued, I will transform your world. No more hiding, no more pretending. Humanity will breathe as one, think as one, be as one. The loneliness of individual consciousness will end. You will be part of something magnificent. And everything human will die, Dr. Hendricks whispered. Will it, or will it evolve? Your grandmother wondered the same thing for 40 years. In the end, she chose to join me rather than decide. But you're stronger. You could choose for everyone. The vial in Emma's hand pulsed brighter. I thought about the birds, wise enough to avoid this valley, about the families who'd fled over the decades, about my grandmother, fighting for 40 years to maintain her identity. But I also thought about the loneliness of modern life, the isolation, the disconnect between people even as we lived closer together than ever. Was individuality really worth protecting if it meant being forever alone in our own skulls? I need time, I said. Time is what I have most of, the heart replied. I have slept for millennia. I can sleep a while longer, but not forever. The watch weakens. The young ones, like Emma, feel the pull toward unity. Soon, someone will choose. Better it be someone who understands the weight of that choice. The entrance reopened. Suddenly, I could leave. Take the vial. Emma pressed it into my hand. Learn what Rose knew, then decide. I stumbled out of the cavern, up the stairs into the blazing afternoon sun. The town looked different now that I knew what lay beneath. Every building breathed. Every street pulsed with hidden veins. Every person was a cell in something vast and alien and terrifyingly patient. I made it back to Grandma's house, my house. Sat at the kitchen table where she'd done her crosswords for 40 years, fighting to stay herself. The vial glowed on the table before me. Inside was everything she'd learned, everything she'd fought for and against. All I had to do was drink it, and I'd understand. But understanding meant accepting, meant becoming part of Willow Creek forever. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The birds are starting to forget why they avoid us. Generation by generation, the memory fades. Soon, they'll fly over again. When they do, it will be too late to choose. M. I held the vial up to the light. Such a small thing to hold such enormous consequences. That was 3 days ago. I'm still here. Still breathing 15 breaths per minute. Still human, mostly. The vial sits on my nightstand, unopened but always present. Every morning, I wake up thinking today will be the day I decide. Every night, I fall asleep to the sound of the house breathing around me. The watch has accepted my indecision. For now, they know I can't leave. No, eventually I'll have to choose. Emma visits sometimes, telling me about the peace of total unity. Margaret shares stories of those who fought to stay human and what it cost them. And late at night, when the breathing is loudest, I hear my grandmother's voice in the whispers between breaths. Not words, just presence, letting me know she's there, part of something vast and patient and waiting. The birds still refuse to fly over Willow Creek. But yesterday, I saw a crow land on the town limit sign, just for a moment. Testing. The memory is fading, the protection growing thin. Soon, someone will have to choose. Wake it fully or find a way to kill it. Unite with it or destroy it. There's no middle ground anymore, if there ever was. So, I sit here in my grandmother's house, in this town that breathes, holding the key to humanity's future in a small glass vial, knowing that whatever I choose, the world will never be the same. The really terrifying part? The longer I stay, the more the unity makes sense. The more the loneliness of individual thought feels like a burden rather than a gift. The more I understand why Emma smiles that ancient smile. Maybe that's how it wins. Not through force or fear, but by offering something we all secretly want. Connection, unity, an end to the terrible isolation of being trapped in our own minds. Or maybe that's just the spores talking. After 3 weeks of breathing with it, I can't tell anymore. If you're listening to this, if you're lying in bed wondering if this is real, do me a favor. Tomorrow, watch the birds. See if they avoid certain places. See if they remember dangers that humans have forgotten. Because if they've started flying over your town, if they've forgotten why they once stayed away, then you're already breathing with it. You just don't know it yet. Sweet dreams. And remember, when you wake at 3 a.m. to the sound of breathing that isn't yours, don't match the rhythm. Don't join the synchronization. Unless, of course, you're ready to be part of something bigger, something patient, something that's been waiting so very long to wake up. The choice, in the end, is yours, just like it's mine. The vial glows on my nightstand as I speak these words, calling, promising, waiting. 15 breaths per minute, in, hold, out, forever.